further ado, I will get started with Digital Fundraising 101, how to get your fundraiser off the ground and make it successful. So excuse me for a moment while I switch my PowerPoints here. And so I do want to hear from you. So what are your challenges when it comes to running a digital fundraising campaign? And what are you really hoping to get out of this discussion today? Because that can also help me guide the conversation too. So awesome. So let's go ahead and get started with Digital Fundraising 101. Mia, if you're looking to just find out where to start and how to plan, this is the perfect session for you. Again, my name is Candace. I run content and education here at CauseVox. And so here at CauseVox, I work with, over the years, I've been here 6 years now, and I've worked with thousands of organizations to help them get their digital fundraising campaigns up and running. And so it's been a pleasure. And seeing all of these different nonprofits be able to be successful with digital fundraising, I really feel like I've learned from them and we've learned from each other. And so I have a lot of great things to share with you today. So for just to start off, I'm going to get started with just a brief intro to digital fundraising. And then we're going to talk about creating your digital fundraiser plan, choosing the right tools for your need, content creation and promotion, and then a quick Q&A. So a lot of things to get through. If I am going too fast past some examples, don't worry, I'm going to send the slides in the follow-up email. Awesome. Lots of great questions so far. So let's talk a little bit about digital fundraising and where we are today. So total online revenue grew by 10% in 2020. So this is from the M&R benchmark report. And it is amazing how crazy, with everyone being stuck at home and being on their phones all the time, there's been this huge shift, of course, to online in general. So all of us had to shift working virtually, engaging with friends and family virtually, and then also, of course, donating virtually as well. So this makes sense, right? This huge jump in online revenue. This also comes after 23% increase in the 2 years before that. So this 10% is actually really huge. So online fundraising is also not going anywhere. So the more you get acquainted with digital now, the better you'll be able to thrive later. So there's a lot of advantages to digital fundraising. So I've talked with a lot of organizations that maybe have run a lot of events in person in the past, and they're not sure about either running their event virtually or just running a digital fundraising campaign in place of it. But throughout this whole year and a half, I've really closely looked at all of these events that have moved online, and there's been a lot of benefits to actually running your events or just a digital fundraising campaign. It costs less to run a digital fundraiser than it does an in-person event. You're not having to pay for a space. You're not having to pay for food most of the time. There's a lot of advantages to keeping those costs super low. And then because of that, you get a higher return on investment and you're able to take home more funds with less effort. There's less administrative tasks. So that comes along with, having to deal with like the locations and also, of all of the logistics that come with managing something in person. And then there's also the ability to get a wider range of participants and supporters. So if you were running an event, let's say, of course, there's only going to be people within, let's say, a 30-mile radius that are going to make it out to that event. Meanwhile, with running something online, you're able to really widen your reach to nationwide and perhaps even internationally for people to donate and engage with whatever your content is as well. And it's also just easy. So there's going to be a lot of people who, younger audiences and older audiences alike, where if it's hard for them to make a donation, they're just not going to do it. So whether that's in person or virtually, but by making something so accessible when it comes to digital fundraising and creating a campaign that's easy, engaging, and easy to donate, they're much more likely to do it. So yeah, lots of great advantages when it comes to digital fundraising. So digital fundraising, I said this yesterday too, virtual fundraising is here to stay. And so the nonprofits that will continue to thrive are going to be the ones that adopt to a really comprehensive digital fundraising strategy. Digital fundraising doesn't just have to be that one virtual event a year, or it doesn't have to just be that one crowdfunding campaign. You really can integrate digital into anything that you do regularly. So whether that is, your annual gala, you can always run a digital fundraiser alongside of it. If you want to run a bowl-a-thon, digital fundraising, be able to fundraise ahead of time. There's Giving Tuesday. That's, of course, kind of a digital first movement in general. So that's awesome to engage with online. And then there's tons and tons of other opportunities for you to engage your community online. It really can be incorporated into anything that you already do as an organization. So I wanted to just break down what the anatomy of a digital fundraising campaign actually looks like, because I feel like I'm saying digital fundraising campaign, but what does that actually look like in reality? So it incorporates a branded fundraising site. So something that you set up, make your own, and then share with your supporters online. It should be able to track progress towards a fundraising goal and an end date. The end date does tend to, basically drive urgency. It should have content on it, whether that's a video or just really strong images and fundraising appeal and more to drive engagement. And also should have an easy donation form. So if you have a great fundraising site, but a difficult donation form, that is going to, of course, deter some donors. So easy donation form with suggested giving levels. So those donation tiers that you can set up to basically drive suggested donation amounts. Easy sharing options, donor listing, and then sometimes peer-to-peer fundraising. So those personal and team pages. So just want to give you a quick look at a couple of these. So this is a crowdfunding campaign run by Hebrew Free Loan Society. They ran this in the middle of COVID, basically to really quickly fund their small business loans. So you can see they have nice and branded. They don't even have a video. They have just a really nice image with a quote from one of their people that they gave their loan to. And then they also have all of these amazing stats on the right. So you can see they have that 650,000 fundraising goal. They have 10 days remaining. So countdown to that end date, and then it'll count up the number of donors. They have a donate button, that easy share button. And then they have content on their page. So this is all about what they do as an organization, really encouraging people to give to the cause. Recent donors at the bottom of the page. So super simple crowdfunding campaign. And then I wanted to show you something that's a little bit more intricate. So there's Summit Assistance Dogs ran their virtual luncheon with us. This was last year's actually, but yeah, so they ran this virtual luncheon, really quickly pivoted from an in-person event to a virtual event. And so I just loved how they set up their page. They branded it, of course. They actually incorporated their live stream on the page itself. So they just copy and pasted their YouTube live stream link so people could tune in day of and also replay after. They had a lot of really great content on their page. They had sponsors, they had links to their YouTube channel to also drive further engagement. They had a challenge match, so matching gifts, and then they also had these virtual table captains. So they encourage those who typically would purchase a table at their in-person event to instead raise $10,000 online, and then provided them these pages to help them do that. So each individual had their own personal page to share with friends and family and fundraise online. So really cool. These individuals were able to share more of their stories about why they personally were engaged with the cause. And so this type of fundraising does tend to raise about twice as much. And I'm already ahead of myself. So yeah, organizations that use peer-to-peer fundraising do overall tend to raise twice as much as opposed to crowdfunding campaigns. So I would highly recommend considering using peer-to-peer, just because you're going to be able to reach a new audience that you haven't reached previously. It's been one of the things where I talk with we'll do like a debrief session with a lot of our customers, and they'll say they got like 80 to 90% of their new donors through the peer-to-peer campaign. So really powerful way to engage a new audience. So it's never been a better time to try peer-to-peer fundraising because it is really relationship driven. It's ideal for digital fundraising because it just inherently connects with social media. Really great way to drive engagement online, and again is that primary driver of new donor acquisition for a lot of organizations. And so yeah, that's kind of just a look at crowdfunding, peer-to-peer. And now let's talk about you and what you want your digital fundraiser to look like. So let's create your digital fundraising plan. So the backbone of a lot of the things I'm about to talk about is creating smart fundraising goals. You've probably seen this before, but goals that are specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. So this is all about setting the right goals for your fundraiser so that you're more likely to succeed. So the first goal that you want to think about for your fundraiser is your overall goal. So if you have already done digital fundraising before, a great way to set a goal for your fundraising campaign is to take a look at how much you've raised previously, increase it by maybe 10%, and kind of set that as the goal, because that's probably what's going to be attainable for your organization. Or kind of take into consideration that plus how much you actually need to raise. So is there a particular program that you need to fund by a certain time? Kind of consider what those gaps in your budget look like, and of course kind of set the goal around that. What you also want to do when you're setting a goal is also set an impact driven goal. So it shouldn't just be about dollar amount, it should also be about what you're accomplishing when you reach this goal. So the better you can set that goal for yourself, the better you'll be able to communicate that to everybody else as well. So who and how many people are benefited from you reaching your goal? So Summit Assistance Dogs took that into consideration. Last year, they raised $186,000 for their virtual event. And then they took that, looked at what they raised last year, and then incorporated that into their fundraising plans this year, where they set a $200,000 goal. Pretty approachable, right? But also, not just keeping it the same. All right, let's talk about participants. So if you do decide to do peer-to-peer fundraising, which I highly recommend, you'll want to think about how many people you actually want to participate. Think through, who's in your audience, who's already either been donating year after year, who's giving their time to you as a volunteer. Your board members are actually great peer-to-peer fundraisers if you're able to engage them. And there's a lot of people that are probably already in your network that want to participate. So think through who's in your network and setting that realistic goal of how many people you want to participate, and then also how much you think each person will raise. A lot of organizations that are doing this for the first time, of course, it depends on your nonprofit and who your audience is. But as a very baseline for small nonprofits, I usually suggest about $300 if you've never done this before, and just kind of testing the waters that way. And then you can build on that for your next digital fundraiser. You can do teams where groups could fundraise together. This works really well for, basically like walkathons and a lot of those style fundraisers. So there's like that competition between groups of people. And then for participants, you might want to consider if you're going to be doing any incentives, awards, or prizes for those participants as well. Okay, awesome. So let's talk about timeline. So this is a question I hear all the time. How long should I run my fundraising campaign for? And of course, the answer is it really depends on what your fundraiser is and what your needs are. But I would like to point out that if I have to name a average time that I see about 45 days or 6 weeks for a lot of these fundraisers. So you'll want to consider your start and end dates for your fundraiser. And then consider the setup time that it's going to take. It's going to take maybe a couple of weeks at least for you to get your page set up. So, definitely set those start and end dates and work backwards from there to determine when you're going to actually need to get started setting up. So about 6 weeks out. And if I'm going to talk a little bit about this later, but I do recommend doing a soft launch and then also doing a major push. So I usually incorporate that soft launch for the first 2 weeks and then the main push, the main launch of the fundraiser for 4 weeks. So that's what I generally see and recommend. So I wanted to just throw out a few more examples here. I think it's really helpful just to see what people have done, what they're doing when it comes to creating these pages as well. All right, so this is not required, but it is certainly a part of a lot of digital campaigns is activities. So are you doing an activity as part of the digital fundraiser? For example, a lot of what I've seen in the last year have been like virtual walkathon style fundraisers or move-a-thons. And so that has been really fun to be able to engage both virtually and digitally and, on their own, working towards a goal. So if you're going to do those challenges, they do actually prove to work really well. I think it's because people aren't just fundraising or just committed to fundraising, but they're also committed to actually doing something themselves. And I think it does make them feel more strongly connected to your fundraiser. So it's great to do an activity challenge. You can also do something more like the Little Black Dress Initiative, where for 5 days, all of their participants wear a black dress to raise awareness while they're fundraising for poverty. So that's another idea of a challenge. So any challenge that you can do and any action that you can inspire your participants to take, it actually really does help to drive up engagement with your campaign. All right, so there's a lot here. I don't know that I need to go deep into sponsors because we're actually doing a whole breakout session on sponsorships later. So I'll actually leave that to Abby to take care of. But yeah, I wanted to just also show you what it looks like to have sponsors. So you can have sponsors for a digital fundraiser. This is usually alongside virtual events, but not exclusively, of course. And so it's really easy to get those sponsorships and be able to fulfill them by displaying them on your page, kind of honoring them as part of the as part of your fundraiser. And then also, as with North Texas Food Bank here, they had this whole Partners for Hope campaign where they got a whole bunch of sponsors to donate and then shared the total of what they gave on their overall page as well. So really kind of cool, different ways that you can acknowledge sponsors through digital. One of the best things that I saw was Walk the States by Parkinson's, Nebraska. They had a whole virtual event where they really gave a lot of shout outs and logos and links back to their companies, and also live 30-second spot during the virtual event. So there's a lot of really creative ways for you to engage sponsors, especially even with digital fundraising. All right, so now that I've gone through a lot of those goal settings options, this is just a quick checklist for you to think through later on. And again, I'll share the slides so you can come back to this. We have this goals worksheet as well as a whole template for you to fill in for digital fundraising and creating that plan for yourself. And so I'll put the link in the chat later for that so you can access that easy to use template. How am I doing on time? All right, so I think we're doing pretty good. Let's talk about, okay, so now that you know what kind of campaign you're running, hopefully crowdfunding, peer-to-peer, and then talk through some of the ways that you can set goals to really drive success for that campaign. Let's talk about choosing the right tools for your needs as well. So usually there's actually a few things going on when you run a digital fundraiser. So I want to talk to you about the digital fundraising software package and just a few ideas that you should keep in mind when it comes to actually choosing a platform, when it comes to, you know, being able to run that successfully. My pro tip is whatever it is that you do, make sure it's as easy for yourself as possible. If you start with a really complicated platform that's hard for you to set up, hard to implement, it's going to really take more time and you know, kind of drive less engagement throughout the whole throughout the whole experience. So you want to be careful that you're choosing whatever things make it easy for you to run this well. Wanted to show you one of these examples of these digital fundraising campaigns run on CauseVox. This was from the Autism Society of Minnesota. They did this cool brunch at home campaign and really customized their page to their needs with their video and live stream embedded there, and then really set up their whole campaign to be really tailored to their organization. So here's just a few statistics. So 65% of all fundraising web traffic is mobile and growing each year. That's what we've seen here at CauseVox. So, you know, we keep that in mind that about 65% of the people that are actually hitting the donate button are on their phone. So really important to keep in mind when it comes to running any kind of digital fundraiser. Another thing to keep in mind is that, and this is a little outdated, so I would even expect that it's a lot more now, but that 54% of consumers have used a mobile wallet to make a payment as of 2019. So this is only going up, and that just shows that donors are actually changing the ways that they're engaging and making payments as well. So also something to keep in mind. This means that you want to make sure that whatever platform you choose is really easy to engage with on mobile. So whether that's making a donation or setting up those peer-to-peer pages, just make sure that it's easy for them, because if it's hard or there's, you know, it's hard to complete their donation, they're just going to give up and walk away. So a few pro tips for choosing a great platform. Again, make sure that it's easy for you to set up, it's mobile optimized, easy to donate. If you want those peer-to-peer capabilities, make sure that that's there. And it actually, there's a lot of platforms that have peer-to-peer, but not a lot of platforms that necessarily make it easy for fundraisers. So I think that's a huge thing to make sure that you test before. And you're able to easily brand, feature your content, showcase those fundraising goals so that you can really easily track progress and incorporate your videos and live streaming potentially onto your site easily. So that's just like a quick checklist to keep in mind. Again, I kind of mentioned earlier that you might want to do a challenge as part of your fundraiser. So also look for ways, platforms that make it easy for you to display those challenges and their progress towards them. We have this activity metric. So this was the miles for the Mojave Desert Land Trust hike-a-thon. And so they challenged their community to hike 100 miles. And so you'll see Celia's page here. She hiked over 150 miles for the cause. So you can see that right on her page alongside her fundraising goal as well. All right, so now you want to think about what other software outside of that digital fundraising platform that you're going to be using. You need to also consider how that platform talks to everything else that you're using. So are you using a CRM or a donor management system? There's Boomerang, Kindful, those are really common ones. I've also seen nonprofits use Little Green Light, Salesforce. There's a lot of ones out there. But again, try to do what's easiest for you. So pick a platform that also potentially integrates, whether it's a direct integration or a third party, or using a third party integration tool like Zapier. I think Jeremy yesterday mentioned how that can really connect those apps together so they can talk to each other, and it saves a lot of time. So definitely keep an eye out for ways that you can connect your applications so that you're not doing a bunch of data reconciliation at the end of this. That's just a total mess. So that can really help streamline the process and save you time. And I would also think about any other technology outside of that that you also want to consider. One of the things that I see sometimes is that nonprofits will also have a landing page on their website alongside their digital fundraising campaign. So an example of this is from Nicholas House. They built this really cool virtual event landing page on their website. And so they had so much control over the way that this looks, which is really nice. It's really branded, has a whole feel for their virtual event. And then they also incorporated a lot of their fundraising goals and elements of their CauseVox crowdfunding or peer-to-peer campaign right onto their site. So this is actually, they embedded their progress bar right onto their website and stylized it. They also did the same with their actual donation form from their crowdfunding campaign. It's right here, it's embedded right on their website. And then also they have a button linking out to where people can go to start a peer-to-peer fundraiser. So really interesting. So this is a little bit more involved, but if you want that customization and that more personalized feel, or just want to highlight your fundraiser right on your website in a unique way, just consider that as well if you're going to be looking into that as part of your campaign. Cool. All right, so now that we've chatted through choosing platform, let's talk about actually the content creation and promotion. So I think I saw a few questions in the chat about how to engage your audience. So this is really, we're going to be chatting through some of those. All right, so whenever you are actually building out your fundraiser, there's actually a lot of content that you're going to be needing to create, not just for your site, but also for the whole rest of your marketing plan. So just keep in mind that this is just kind of a checklist for you. I'll let you refer back to it later. I won't run through all of them, but there's a few pieces of content that you want to make sure that you create ahead of time. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Social media users who donate, 56% said that the compelling storytelling is what motivated them to make a donation. And so this ties back to all of your marketing in general. I think this is consistent because those same users on social media are also your same followers on your email list. And everyone that's engaging with you is going to be motivated by really great storytelling. So let's look at a couple of ways and where you can be telling those stories. So the first place that you want to think about telling a really good story is your fundraising appeal on your digital fundraising campaign. So this is actually the content that goes right on your site. And it really is very important to communicate that well on the page, because you can also do great marketing and tell all these great stories. But if on the page itself, the content is just not lining up and not telling that same story, it's going to feel disjointed for those donors and potentially drive people away. So it's really important that you have a great fundraising appeal. So you want to do a few things with this appeal. It's communicating what you're trying to accomplish. So that impact-driven fundraising goal that we talked about earlier, why it matters that the donors give and give now, and what the impact will look like when this is successful. I've also seen some organizations share what it would look like if you don't meet their goal. That can really put some pressure on the donor to participate and help you get there. It should always tell a story. So amazing session yesterday from Rain, all about storytelling. I think you can definitely take a few takeaways from that to really help you craft a good story for your organization. Again, make sure to answer why now, because you can do a great job of communicating why someone should give, but if they don't see any urgency to it, they'll just be like, oh, I can just come back and donate later. So you want to capture them now that they're on your page. And then a clear call to action to donate. I've seen so many organizations have such a strong appeal, and then at the end of it, there's just either no call to action where they just leave it up to the donor to figure out what, or the, their potential donor to figure out what they want to do. Or there's like a very soft call to action where it's just like, hey, thanks for supporting us. And they're like, well, yeah, I've read this and I do support you. That's awesome. But I think one of the huge parts of the fundraising appeal is that clear call to action to actually give. So I have this example appeal here. I'll include this as well in the slides, so you'll be able to refer back to this later. I love this appeal for a lot of reasons. It's brief. It doesn't take 10 minutes to read through. It's like a couple minute read. It's very impact is emphasized. So even their first line here right out the gate, it says, since opening our doors in 2000, more than 1,500 children have experienced the magic of fiber. That's an amazing, very specific impact that I can get behind. They do a great job of incorporating images and quotes from the students themselves, which I think is such a cool way to tell your story, because it's not just you telling somebody else's story, it's actually them telling their own story. So I think that's really powerful. And then, yeah, a lot of really great things here with, it's very mission focused. It has, those program graduates. I can see who my donations are going towards. And then a really strong CTA at the end. I have a few storytelling tips, kind of like what Fiverr did. Do your best to source stories from your community. So you can ask them, hey, what have you gotten out of our programs? And just see what people come back with, and use those quotes and images in your messaging. And then also encourage storytelling on multiple platforms and in multiple mediums. So people could write in their story, or, of course, share over video, or share a quote and an image. So a few different ways to really engage, and not just in one way, but also in multiple ways, on different social media platforms, for example. So a great example of this is from Stupid Cancer. I love this post. It says, today is National Scar Appreciation Day. Our scars make us unique, and the stories behind them make us strong. We know you may not always love your scars, but today is a day to embrace them. This photo comes from Patrick. Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful picture with Stupid Cancer. Feeling up to sharing your scar story, so you can submit a story or a photo through the links below. So they have two different ways that you can share your story and submit a photo, and they're really encouraging engagement across multiple platforms. This is on Facebook, but they did a real multi-channel approach to this. So I loved this, and they're just getting people to share their stories, so then they can further engage their audience. All right. Yeah, so I also wanted to showcase how Arizona Friends of Foster Children Foundation also incorporated a lot of the individual stories of the youth who have been through their program. So they incorporated a lot of their stories themselves and pictures of where they are today on their page. And it drove a really emotional and really honest response. It felt like very organic and genuine. So it was really cool to see. A different take on this is also from the National Society of Black Engineers in Boston for their upcoming gala that happened in March. And then what they did is also engage a lot of their participants to share just a quick video of why they were excited for the gala. And they also started posting that and using that and encouraged people to share those stories. And it generated quite a lot of views and engagement before their event. Yeah, and then also I also love this from Mojave Desert Land Trust. They also created these really awesome graphics, both for sharing purposes and then just like on their page itself. So all of these pieces of content you should be looking at creating ahead of time so that you can both tell your story on your page itself and then off your page and on social, and really communicate that well across multiple channels. So if you want, if you need some guidance for graphic design, I do recommend Canva. We had a whole session during the Digital Fundraising Summit last year on how you can become a graphic designer with Canva. It's a pretty short session, and it's really fantastic. It was one of the favorite sessions last year. So highly recommend you take a look at it. We unlocked it, so it's free to watch. All right, so now that hopefully you've created all your content and are sharing your story or prepared to share your story across multiple platforms, let's actually talk about launching your campaign. All right, so one of my tips is to definitely plan to soft launch your digital campaign. Jake from a Mortgage Professionals Providing Hope said, think of the launch of a peer-to-peer campaign the same way you would the launch of a capital campaign. You wouldn't release a campaign to the public to raise $20 million for your new building with $0 in the coffers and no backers. So why would you take that approach with peer-to-peer? And digital fundraising can also apply to here. When you soft launch your campaign, it's releasing it to your audience ahead of time, to a segment of your audience ahead of time, so that you can build backing before you email out to your whole list, for example. So the idea is to really drive select donors who are very consistent, kind of those top donors you expect to give whenever you ask. To engage with your fundraiser ahead of time and ask them to make the first donation. So this is actually a cool opportunity to build trust with your donors too, because you can include them in that exclusive list and say, hey, we're getting ready to launch this campaign, but I wanted you to see it first and have the opportunity to kick us off and start our fundraiser with us. You can do the same thing with also peer-to-peer fundraisers if you do choose to do that, is, email that out to a select group of those potential fundraisers for you ahead of time. And it also just increases the likeliness of them to engage with it because they have a couple of more weeks to set up their pages. So that's always helpful too. And all of this, between driving donations ahead of time before you email it out to your whole list, or before you even do the main peer-to-peer push, has been proven to really drive momentum for campaigns. This is a best practice across the board. Anyone you talk to that does advise on crowdfunding, peer-to-peer, anything, is going to tell you to do this for sure. And so, yeah, so with soft launches, that's more of like that segmented, intentional outreach. A lot of it's one-on-one. Some of it is just emailing a small segment of your list, but it's more of that, more personalized approach. And then when you have your big launch, you're going to really go full blown on your multi-channel marketing. So you should be incorporating your fundraiser onto your website, or directing people from your website to your fundraiser while it's running. So when you launch, if I go to your website, it should be like the first or second thing I see is that you're running this fundraising campaign. Email, depending on the length of time, I sometimes recommend emailing like once a week, but basically, you're going to want to use all of your channels that you have available, SMS, social media, direct mail. Sometimes you can actually email, or not email, you can mail people a postcard with a QR code directing them to give online. I've seen that done sometimes. That's really cool. You can do live streams to make it more engaging the day at the end of your fundraiser, using phone calls as well. So all of those tried and true tactics for fundraising are still applicable, even if you're fundraising online. So I have this kind of timeline mapped out here to help just give you a general sense of what this can look like. So like, let's say you're doing that soft launch 2 weeks out, you're asking your board members and other select members of your team, kind of like those virtual table captains that we saw earlier, to set up their pages first, and then giving them the opportunity and the time to do that well. And then 1 week out, you're making sure that your fundraisers have set up their pages ahead of time and hopefully made their first donation. And then 1 week before you launch to the public, you want to go ahead and start contacting those donors to make those first gifts. This is not a hard and fast rule. This is just kind of what you should be thinking about when it comes to a timeline for launch. 1 week out, you want to do a email and social media announcement, letting people know that there is a fundraiser coming soon. And also kind of doing that lead up so that it's not just out of left field. Hey, we're fundraising now, but it also gives people the opportunity to build some anticipation towards your fundraiser. And then, yeah, I mean, basically you want to incorporate that full multi-channel push across all of your channels on launch day, and then continue that multi-channel approach throughout the end of your fundraiser, however long it may be. So this is just kind of a quick look of what that communications timeline can look like, but it does involve a lot of frequent communications, not just over email, not just over social, but really maximizing your reach over multiple channels and hopefully through peer-to-peer as well. All right, so that being said, I want to very briefly just circle back on peer-to-peer and what it looks like to not just recruit participants well, but equip them to succeed. And part of this I see time and time again is through toolkits. So really using toolkits to equip your fundraisers to have all the things they need to share it well to their friends and family. You can do toolkits for crowdfunding campaigns, but I really highly recommend every peer-to-peer campaign that I've seen do not just good, but great has had a toolkit. So this is a look at Summit Assistance Dog's virtual table captain packet. They gave this to all of their fundraisers, and it really gave them the instructions and tools they need to succeed. They had templates that they can copy and paste into an email. They had a whole, and then Parkinson's Nebraska created this whole content calendar for their fundraisers, for their peer-to-peer fundraisers, that showed all of the different ways and suggested ways that they should be sharing. So on email, on social, and it really did keep people sharing throughout the entire campaign. So really effective way to do that. Cool. So yeah, so very quick, just like list of pro tips for you to keep in mind when you're running a digital fundraiser. You want to make sure that you are driving everyone to participate, donate, and track progress on one page. On occasion, I've seen organizations try to run multiple crowdfunding campaigns at the same time. It gets confusing, and it also kind of splits your momentum. So it kind of takes the wind out of it a little bit. Make sure that you're driving everyone to one page to donate and engage. Easy donations are a must. I can't explain that enough. You can do the best marketing in the world, have the best storytelling, but if it's like impossible to make a donation, or it takes too long, or it's not mobile optimized, your donors are going to get frustrated and they're going to walk away. So that's why that convert stage of the cycle is so important, and making sure that that's easy, because the easier it is, the more donations you're going to get. Tying gifts to impact does really help drive up donations, because you're able to really 68% of donors say that having a impact statement there basically encourages them to give. So having just an explanation of what $25 accomplishes, even if it's small, really does help increase gifts. Yeah, there's also matching gifts also does tend to drive up gifts sorry. Having a matching gift in place for your campaign tends to make individual donors give 50% more. So if you are able to get a match for your digital fundraiser, it's a great way to drive up gifts as well. Yeah, so those are a few quick tips here. I know I'm out of time. If you are interested in learning more about how you can use CauseVox to run your digital fundraising, feel free to book a time to chat. We also have our new ticketing option out. So if you signed up today, you used our ticketing platform for that. So if you like that experience, you can get that for your own event. And then I also wanted to direct people to that template that I mentioned earlier of where you can get that virtual fundraising event planning calendar and template. So it's really helpful. It's actually, we have a couple of templates out there. This has gotten thousands and thousands of views and uses. So I think it will be of great use to you as well. So I know I'm out of time. Jenna, I don't know, do we have some time for questions before we get started with our next discussion?
Yeah, I think we have time for a couple questions.
Cool.
Yeah, it looks like we have till 9:15, so we have lots of questions in the Q&A.
Perfect. All right, so let's take a look. Any questions that jump out at you first?
Yeah, so David asked, how does donor retention compare between generally acquired donors versus peer-to-peer acquired donors?
Yeah, that is a great question. So with peer-to-peer, there does tend to be a little bit, it might be a little bit harder to retain those donors, but I do have two suggestions for you. So the one thing is that with peer-to-peer, sometimes they're like, yay, a new donor came in, but there's not a lot of like follow-up with that donor to really engage with them. So I would also, following up on a peer-to-peer campaign, make sure that you enroll those donors in like either like a welcome email series or just maybe give them a call, just like start developing that relationship, right? Because with peer-to-peer, donors that give through peer-to-peer pages, their relationship is with their friend. But now once they give, you have the opportunity to develop that relationship with your organization. So I do highly recommend having, a customized welcome series for them handy and ready to go so that you can better educate and connect with them. The other thing is with a lot of peer-to-peer campaigns, they're run annually. So you'll see, I think this is actually from the Climb Out of Darkness campaign that we'll see and hear more about during Jenna's panel discussion. But yeah, a lot of that is more about getting those same fundraisers back. So your donor retentions is also sometimes tied to retaining those fundraisers. So if you're able to retain those people who are fundraising for you, you're able to retain those donors for the next year.
Awesome.
Cool.
So Kelly asked, what platforms do you recommend for branded digital fundraising sites?
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, you can use the Summit Assistance dogs, and all of the examples you saw today are all run on CauseVox. So you can really easily set up a branded digital fundraising site. And branding is really important. I think people trust something that's branded more than something that's not. So when you have that branded site that you're driving people to, it does have a familiarity that you're building with your donors that will encourage them to give. Yeah, Mike, we'll go ahead and share the link to the video about graphic design. I'll get that for you in a moment. So I'll include that. Again, I'm going to send all these slides. So don't worry about if you missed any of them or want to go back to those examples. I'll get those to you in a little bit. Yeah. Cool. So Tracy mentioned that I was not successful with GoFundMe or CrowdRise. My campaign never gets posted by GoFundMe, CrowdRise, and by GoFundMe, CrowdRise, the organization. I hardly get any donations. I don't have a medical crisis, which I don't get to see the most attention. So how do I make these work? You showed two very successful campaigns. And so, yeah, I think a lot of what we talked about will all really help drive attention. But I think the biggest misconception when it comes to a lot of these digital fundraising campaigns is that it's going to be just people are going to somehow find it online and then be moved to donate. And it's less of that and more having a really comprehensive marketing plan around it. People will often ask me like, oh, when's the best day of the week to launch a campaign? I'm like, it's whenever your marketing is going to be pushing it. So it doesn't necessarily matter. Or I guess I wouldn't expect there to be a lot of donors that just happen across your campaign. I would definitely expect to be promoting it and using different means like peer-to-peer to get in front of a new audience. Sean asked, would you consider conducting a survey to determine what peers would be willing to do to specifically support your organization? Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Anytime you can get feedback from your supporters about what the ways that they want to engage with you, that's really great. I would also say, you know, maybe people haven't thought about fundraising for you before, but putting it out there they might consider it. So yeah, so I would definitely, surveys are great, always, to just see where your supporters are at. But yeah, I think also just sometimes asking them what if they'd be interested is a great way to test the waters too. Cool. All right. When we switched from an in-person fundraising event to virtual, we had trouble securing sponsors because they wanted to provide physical products. Do you have any suggestions for how to further involve local sponsors other than branding placement? So, I mean, a lot of it is going to be branding placement online, but also, I mean, I guess, so they wanted to give you products. I mean, seeing if you can mail them out, that's always great. But I would also suggest kind of like what we're doing, even with these giveaways, like those are our sponsors too. But framing it as a giveaway during the virtual event is pretty exciting, right? Like it drives a lot of engagement. And I do think that does provide value to those sponsors. So either doing some giveaways or giving them some airtime itself just for a few minutes during your virtual event. That's a great way to get your sponsors to be able to highlight their product and see value. Also, a lot of what you can do is consider giving them the list of whoever opts in to receive communications. You don't want people just getting solicited that haven't been asked for that, but giving the sponsor the list of the emails of everyone who attended so that they can do their own follow-ups and incorporate them into their email list. That's also a huge value for them. So yeah, I would kind of explore some of those options. And yeah, there's also going to be that whole session on sponsorships during the lunch break. So I would encourage you to attend that if you want to dive really deep. Is a generic digital thank you satisfactory, or should there be a personal thank you to each donor? There should be an automatic receipt, and it's fine if that's general, because they need that receipt right away. If a donor gets a receipt within 48 hours, they're 400% more likely to donate again. So definitely get those receipts out right away. And then if you want to follow up later with a personal thank you, that is also a nice touch. There's also ways that you can automate that where it's customized and personalized to a certain extent, but you don't have to, craft each communication from the start. And so I think even some of Jeremy's tips yesterday about, having those templates on hand, like email templates that you can customize and send out and have it be more personal, is a great way to do that. Also, welcome email series are pretty important too. So having a series of emails that goes out as after someone makes their first donation. All right, so I think that's all the time that we have, right, Jenna?
Yep, just about 3 minutes before Anon gets started.
All right, so let's get back to the program. So excited. There's so many great things coming up today. Thanks for sticking around for my session. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to chat more, I would love to connect with you. So feel free to schedule a demo and we can do that. Or I'll put in a 15-minute, my 15-minute booking link if you just want to chat about your digital campaign for you. And we'll go over all those details.